The galaxy was vast, endless, and filled with countless stars, planets, and life forms. But in the farthest corners of the universe, hidden away from the eyes of the Empire, a forgotten world stood still. It was a planet where time seemed to have stopped, a world with no name, no history, just an isolated speck in the cosmos. This planet was the home of Elysia, the last living member of an ancient and powerful race known as the Iridia. For centuries, the Iridia had been protectors of the galaxy. Their abilities were unmatched, and their knowledge of the universe vast. They were keepers of secrets, guardians of peace, and the last line of defense against the dark forces that threatened the galaxy. But all of that changed when the Empire, a ruthless and expansionist regime, set its sights on their civilization. The Iridia had been hunted down, one by one, until only Elysia remained. She was the last of her kind, and her existence had become nothing more than a legend, a story whispered among the stars. The Empire believed her to be a myth, a ghost, and they had long since stopped searching for her. But deep down, there were those who still believed she was out there, hiding, waiting for the right moment to return. Elysia's life on this forgotten planet had been a quiet one. For years, she had kept herself hidden, blending into the natural landscape, living in peace with the planet's wildlife. The world she lived on was lush and green, with towering trees that reached toward the sky and oceans that stretched endlessly across the horizon. There were no cities, no machines, no war. It was the perfect place to hide, and Elysia had learned to live in harmony with the planet. But even in her isolation, Elysia was never truly alone. She had her thoughts, her memories, and the lingering presence of her ancestors, whose spirits guided her in ways she could not explain. She had often wondered if she was meant for something greater, if there was a purpose to her survival. But as the years passed, she had grown content with her simple life, even if a part of her still longed for the days when her people had stood together as guardians of the galaxy. Then, one day, everything changed. A small, unmarked ship appeared in the skies above her home. At first, Elysia thought it was a passing starship, just another traveler making its way through the galaxy. But as the ship descended, she felt a familiar presence, a strange pull that seemed to come from the very core of her being. It was a sensation she hadn't felt in years, a connection that ran deeper than anything she had ever experienced. Someone was looking for her. The ship landed in a clearing not far from her home. Elysia watched from the shadows, her heart racing. She didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but she knew that this moment would change everything. The ship's hatch opened, and a figure stepped out. It was a man dressed in the uniform of the Intergalactic Protectorate, the galaxy's peacekeeping force. He looked human, but there was something about him that made Elysia pause. There was a strength in his posture, a determination in his eyes. He wasn't here by accident. The man, Captain Eric Thorne, scanned the surroundings as he stepped onto the planet's surface. His mission had been clear from the start: find the last of the Iridia and bring her back. The message had been a mystery, but the coordinates had led him here to this remote world. He had heard the stories, the rumors of a surviving Iridia, but he had never truly believed them. That was until he received the encrypted message, the one with the ancient code, the one that had been passed down through his family for generations. The message had come from a source he couldn't trace, but it had been enough to convince him. Elysia was real, she was alive, and he was the one tasked with bringing her back to the Protectorate. He moved cautiously, aware of the potential dangers. He had studied the Iridia, their culture, and their powers. He knew they were not to be underestimated. He also knew that the Empire would stop at nothing to capture her, and that if he didn't find her first, they would. As Eric made his way through the dense jungle, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. It was as if the planet itself was alive, its every breath synchronized with his own. He had encountered many strange worlds during his travels, but none like this. The atmosphere was thick with an ancient energy, a power that pulsed through the very ground beneath his feet. He stopped when he reached a clearing. Before him stood a massive tree, its trunk wide and twisted, its roots snaking deep into the earth. The tree was unlike any he had ever seen, its leaves shimmering with an otherworldly glow. He could feel the pull again, that sensation that something, or someone, was near. The air felt charged, as if it held the weight of the past. He wasn't alone. From the shadows, Elysia emerged. She moved with the grace of someone who had spent their entire life in the wilderness, her steps silent on the forest floor. She was tall, with flowing silver hair that shimmered in the soft light of the clearing. Her eyes, a deep violet, seemed to glow with an inner power, one that was both beautiful and terrifying. She wore a simple tunic, the same colors as the world around her, blending seamlessly into her surroundings. "Who are you?" Elijah's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of centuries of knowledge. She didn't trust him, and she wasn't sure if she ever would. The galaxy had been cruel to her people, and she had learned long ago not to trust anyone who came looking for the Iridia. Eric stood tall, meeting her gaze with determination. "I'm here to help," he said. "I know who you are, Elijah. You're the last of your kind. The galaxy needs you." Elijah didn't speak at first. She studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight of the human standing before her. There was something about him, something different from the others she had encountered in her life. She didn't know if it was his honesty, his determination, or something deeper, but she felt it, the connection between them. "I don't need saving," she replied, her voice firm. "I've been alone for a long time, and I'm not going back to the galaxy. Not now, not ever." Eric's heart sank, but he refused to give up. He had come this far, and he knew that Elijah was the key to saving the galaxy from the Empire's tyranny. The Empire would stop at nothing to destroy her, and he couldn't let that happen. "We don't have much time," Eric said. "The Empire is coming. They've been searching for you for years. I'm here to protect you." Elijah's expression softened just for a moment. She knew the Empire's reach all too well. She had seen what they had done to her people. She had witnessed the destruction of her world, the fall of her civilization. The last thing she wanted was to be dragged back into that war, but something in Eric's eyes told her that this was different. This wasn't just another soldier on a mission. He wasn't like the others. And for the first time in a long while, she felt the faintest spark of hope. "I won't go without a fight," she said. "I wouldn't have it any other way," Eric replied, a small smile crossing his face. And so the journey began. Together, they would face the Empire, the darkness that threatened to consume the galaxy, and the secrets that lay buried deep within the heart of Elijah's past. But before they could face their enemies, they would have to trust each other, something neither of them had done for a long time. Elijah had been hiding for centuries, and now, with Eric by her side, she would have to decide whether to emerge from the shadows and fight for the galaxy that had forgotten her, or let it fall into the hands of those who sought to destroy everything she had once protected. The stage was set, and the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. The following days after Eric's meeting with Elijah passed in a blur of planning, uncertainty, and growing tension. They knew the Empire was close. They could feel the presence of its ships in the sky above the planet, lurking, waiting. The last thing they needed was to be discovered. Every movement was calculated, every step taken with caution, but even in their isolation, they could not escape the looming shadow of the Empire. Eric and Elijah spent hours each day in the clearing, discussing their plans, trying to find a way to protect her and stop the Empire. Despite her reluctance to leave her peaceful life behind, Elijah knew the danger was real. She couldn't hide forever. The Empire would not stop until they found her. But the choice of how to fight, how to face this overwhelming threat, weighed heavily on her. She had spent so long in seclusion, avoiding conflict, that she had nearly forgotten what it meant to be a warrior. Eric could sense her hesitation. He understood why she was reluctant. The galaxy had abandoned her people, and she had been forced to live alone for centuries. She had seen the destruction, the deaths of her kind. She had witnessed the fall of the Iridia, a once proud race of guardians whose name now echoed in the wind like a forgotten song. But he also knew that Elijah was more than just a survivor. She was the last hope. "I never asked for this," Elijah said one evening as they sat near a crackling fire, the stars overhead a silent witness to their conversation. "I never wanted to be the savior, to carry the weight of an entire galaxy on my shoulders. My people, they died for nothing." "What makes you think I can change anything now?" Eric, who had been watching the flames dance, turned to face her. He understood her pain. He could see the scars, both physical and emotional, that Elijah carried with her. The burden of being the last of her kind was not something he could easily comprehend. He had lost people too, friends, comrades, but his losses were small compared to what Elijah had endured. "You don't have to do this alone," Eric said softly. "I'm here. I've always been here, even if I didn't know it yet. You're not the last of your kind in this fight. You have allies. You have me, and we have the galaxy behind us. The Empire might think they've won, but we can stop them, together." Elijah was silent for a moment, her violet eyes staring into the fire. It was true. She had always thought of herself as a solitary being, a remnant of a forgotten age. But here, in this moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The kind of hope that burned like a steady flame, one that refused to be extinguished no matter how dark the night became. "I've never known what it means to trust someone again," Elijah admitted. "After everything that's happened, how can I trust you? How can I trust anyone?" Eric didn't hesitate. "You don't have to trust me all at once," he said. "Trust is built, not given. It takes time, but I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to fight for you, for the galaxy, and for everything that's been lost. I'm here to show you that not all humans are like the ones you've known. We're not all the same." Elijah met his gaze, searching for any sign of deceit, but there was none. His eyes were honest, and in them she saw a reflection of something she hadn't seen in a long time: true sincerity. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make her take the first step. "I'll help you," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "But this doesn't mean I trust you." "Not yet," Eric nodded, accepting her words with grace. "That's all I can ask for." The next few days were filled with action. Elijah and Eric began to strategize, to prepare for what was coming. They didn't have much time, but they knew the Empire's forces were vast and relentless. Eric had brought a small team of soldiers with him, all highly trained and skilled in combat, but the situation was more complicated than just a fight. They needed to outsmart the Empire, not just overpower them. Elijah, with her ancient knowledge of tactics and her deep understanding of the galaxy's history, became the key to their plan. She knew the Empire's weaknesses, the places they had failed, and the strategies they had used to conquer. She could see the patterns, the mistakes they had made in their rise to power, and that knowledge became their advantage. The first move was to destroy a communications relay that the Empire had set up on a nearby moon. If they could cut off the Empire's ability to coordinate, it would buy them valuable time. The attack had to be quick and precise. No room for errors. Eric led a small team of soldiers, while Elijah provided support from a distance, using her unique abilities to manipulate the environment. As they approached the moon's surface, the tension was palpable. The air was thick with the hum of their ship's engines, the sound of their hearts beating in their chests. Eric stood at the helm, eyes focused on the dark moon below. He could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This mission wasn't just about stopping the Empire, it was about proving to Elijah that they could do this together. The moon's surface was desolate, covered in craters and jagged rock formations. There were no signs of life, no structures to hide behind. It was the perfect place for a covert operation, but it also meant there would be nowhere to run if things went wrong. As they landed near the relay station, Eric and his team moved quickly, using the cover of the moon's rocky terrain to approach the building. The Empire's presence was minimal, but they knew the relay station was crucial to their operations. If they could take it down, it would be a significant blow. Elijah's role was vital. From the ship, she used her powers to disrupt the sensors and communications, cloaking their movements and preventing the Empire from detecting them. Her connection to the planet and its ancient energies gave her the ability to manipulate the environment in subtle ways, bending the very fabric of reality to her will. The mission was going smoothly, but as they reached the station's entrance, a group of Empire soldiers appeared from behind a nearby ridge. The surprise attack left no room for negotiation. Eric and his team fought back, guns blazing, while Elijah stayed hidden, using her powers to disable the enemy's weapons and disrupt their communications. It was a quick battle, but one that was hard fought. Eric and his team managed to destroy the relay station, but not without casualties. Several soldiers were wounded, and the tension in the air remained high as they made their escape back to the ship. As they flew away from the moon, Eric looked out the window, his heart heavy with the realization that this was only the beginning. The Empire wouldn't be easy to defeat, and the cost of victory would be high. But there was no turning back now. Elijah, standing beside him, spoke softly. "You did well." Eric nodded, but there was no satisfaction in his response. "It's not over, not yet." Together they looked out into the vast expanse of space. They knew the road ahead would be long and dangerous, but they also knew that they weren't alone. They had each other now, and that, in the end, might be enough to change the course of history. The days that followed their successful mission on the moon were filled with urgency and a growing sense of tension. Eric and Elijah knew the Empire would not be far behind. They had struck a blow, but it was only a small one. The Empire's forces were vast, and they would not stop until they had captured the last of the Iridia. Eric sat in the command center of the ship, studying the star maps and coordinates that stretched across the screen. His mind was focused, but beneath the calm exterior there was a storm of thoughts. The Empire was relentless, and each day that passed brought them closer to Elysia. He had made a promise to protect her, and every step they took brought them nearer to fulfilling that promise, but it also brought them closer to danger. Elysia was standing by the window, gazing out at the stars. There was a distant look in her eyes, as if she could see beyond the present, beyond the stars that filled the sky. She had been like this for hours, lost in her thoughts. Eric knew it was the weight of her past, the years of solitude, the loss of her people that had made her this way. But he also knew she had to face the truth, that the galaxy had changed, and so had she. "Are you thinking about the past?" Eric asked, breaking the silence. Elysia turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "The past is all I have," she said softly. "The future, it's uncertain. I don't know what it holds, but I know the Empire is coming. They won't stop until they find me." Eric stood up from the console and walked toward her. "We can stop them. We've already shown that we can fight back." "I don't know if I can," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long hiding, so long avoiding conflict. I've seen the destruction of my people, the fall of my race. I don't know if I'm strong enough to lead again." Eric placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone. I'm with you, and you have the power to change things. You're not the last of your kind. You're the beginning of something new." Elysia looked at him, a flicker of something, hope, perhaps, appearing in her eyes. She had always carried the burden of being the last of the Iridia, but she had never thought of herself as a leader. She had never considered that she could be the one to fight back, to rise above the pain and loss. But maybe Eric was right. Maybe this was the moment where everything changed. For the next few days, they worked together to plan their next move. They knew the Empire's forces would soon be in full pursuit, and they needed to be ready. Eric's team, though small, was skilled and loyal. They had already proven themselves in the previous battle, but they would need more than just brute strength to survive the Empire's wrath. They needed strategy, intelligence, and the element of surprise. Elysia's knowledge of the Empire's tactics and weaknesses became their greatest advantage. She had seen the Empire rise to power and knew how they operated. From their battle strategies to their weaknesses in technology, she had invaluable insights that could turn the tide of the war. With each passing day, Eric grew more impressed by her intelligence and strength. She was more than just the last of her kind. She was a force to be reckoned with. They spent countless hours studying the Empire's fleet movements, analyzing data, and preparing for their next strike. The first task was to find a way to weaken the Empire's grip on the galaxy's outer territories. The Empire had established a stronghold on several planets, and it was essential that they disrupt their supply lines and communication networks. One of the key targets was a heavily fortified mining colony on the planet Jar. The colony produced rare minerals essential for the Empire's war machines, and it was heavily guarded. It was a dangerous mission, but it was their best chance to deal a significant blow to the Empire's operations. Eric knew this mission would test them all. The Empire would not take kindly to any disruptions in their supply chains, and they would fight back with everything they had. But they couldn't afford to wait any longer. The Empire's forces were closing in, and if they didn't act now, they would be too late. The night before the mission, Eric and Elysia stood on the observation deck, looking out at the endless expanse of stars. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with understanding and a shared sense of purpose. "I'm ready," Elysia said finally, breaking the silence. "I know what I have to do. I've spent too long running. It's time to stop hiding." Eric turned to face her, his expression serious but supportive. "We'll do this together. No matter what happens, you're not alone." The next morning, the team set course for Jar. The journey was long, and the tension in the ship was palpable. Everyone knew what was at stake, and there was no room for mistakes. As they approached the planet, Eric and his team reviewed the plan once more. The mission was simple: infiltrate the mining colony, sabotage their operations, and disable their communications. If they could cut off the Empire's ability to communicate and coordinate, it would cripple their efforts in the region. Elysia, using her connection to the ancient energies of the galaxy, would act as their guide. She could sense the Empire's presence, feel their movements, and detect the weaknesses in their defenses. Her abilities were a gift, but they also came with a cost. The more she used them, the more it drained her energy. It was a delicate balance, but she knew that this mission was too important to let her limitations hold her back. The ship descended onto the surface of Jar, the atmosphere thick with tension. The planet's surface was barren, covered in rocky plains and vast deserts. The mining colony was located in a massive underground complex, hidden deep beneath the planet's surface. It was well guarded, but Eric's team was prepared. They had the element of surprise, and with Elijah's guidance, they would find their way in. The team moved swiftly, using the shadows to cover their movements. The Empire's soldiers were everywhere, patrolling the tunnels and watching for any signs of trouble. But Elijah's abilities allowed them to stay one step ahead, her powers subtly manipulating the environment around them, masking their presence. As they reached the heart of the colony, they found the control room, an intimidating structure filled with blinking lights and the hum of machines. Eric and his team quickly set to work, planting explosives and disabling the security systems. Elijah's mind was sharp, guiding them through the maze of corridors and machinery, her instincts leading them to the heart of the Empire's operation. Just as they were about to complete their mission, an alarm blared through the complex, signaling that their presence had been detected. The Empire had found them. The next few moments were chaos. Eric and his team fought back, guns blazing, as Elijah used her powers to disrupt the Empire's weapons and disable their soldiers. The underground complex shook as the explosives went off, sending tremors through the walls. The Empire's forces retaliated with overwhelming force, but Eric and his team held their ground. They fought with everything they had, determined not to let the Empire win. In the midst of the battle, Elijah felt a surge of energy. The power of her ancestors seemed to course through her veins, and for a moment she felt invincible. She unleashed her powers, sending shockwaves through the complex, knocking the Empire's soldiers off their feet and causing the walls to crack and crumble. It was a display of raw power that left Eric and his team in awe. As the dust settled, the mining colony was in ruins. The Empire's communication networks were destroyed, and their supply lines were cut off. Eric's team had achieved their goal, but at a great cost. Several members of the team had been injured, and the battle had taken its toll on everyone. As they made their way back to the ship, Eric turned to Elijah. "You did it! We did it!" Elijah nodded, but there was a look of exhaustion in her eyes. "The Empire will come for us now." "We've only just begun." Eric's heart sank. He knew the Empire wouldn't take kindly to this loss. The war was far from over, but they had made their mark. The battle for the galaxy had only just begun, and Elijah and Eric were at the center of it. But they were not alone. Together, they had proven that they could fight back. Together, they had shown the galaxy that the Empire could be defeated. And for the first time in years, Elijah felt the spark of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a purpose, a reason to fight. And with Eric by her side, she knew that they could change the galaxy's fate, one battle at a time. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, and the weight of what was at stake was starting to feel unbearable. Eric could feel it in his bones, the pressure, the fear, the looming threat of the Empire. He had never been one to back down from a fight, but this was different. This was bigger than anything he had faced before. This was a war not just for survival, but for the future of the galaxy itself. Elijah, too, felt the burden. She had always been a protector, but the galaxy was vast, and her powers, though extraordinary, had their limits. The more she tapped into them, the more she felt the strain on her body. She had lived for centuries, but never had she felt so alone in a battle that seemed endless. The destruction of the mining colony had been a victory, but at a heavy cost. The Empire would not take kindly to losing their valuable assets. The next battle would be worse, and they all knew it. In the days that followed, the crew of the ship worked tirelessly, strategizing their next move. The Empire was regrouping, and their forces were already closing in on the planet where they had made their last stand. The next target would be critical. If they could strike at the heart of the Empire's command structure, they could delay the coming invasion and give the galaxy's rebels a fighting chance. Elijah stood by the ship's observation deck, watching the stars twinkle outside. She often found herself lost in thought, her mind wandering to places it had long since abandoned. The galaxy had changed, and so had she. She had once believed in the Iridia's purpose in their role as guardians, but now she was no longer sure what that purpose was. What was the point of protecting a galaxy that had turned its back on her people? What was the point of fighting if it meant endless war? "Are you ready?" Eric's voice broke through her thoughts. He was standing behind her, his expression calm, but his eyes betraying the concern he felt. Elijah turned to face him, her violet eyes meeting his. She had known him for a long time now, but she had never seen him like this, worn, exhausted, and carrying the weight of a war on his shoulders. She understood. He had lost everything just like her, but unlike her, he had a chance to fight back. He had a purpose. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she admitted, her voice quieter than she had intended. "I've spent so long running, so long avoiding this fight. I don't know if I can do it again. I've seen what happens when you trust people, when you let them in, and I've lost too much already." Eric took a step closer, his voice steady. "I get it. You've been carrying this alone for far too long, but you don't have to do this by yourself anymore. We're all in this together, Elijah. You're not alone, not now, not ever." For a moment, Elijah didn't speak. She just stood there, her mind racing. She had spent so many years alone, so many years keeping everyone at arm's length, but Eric had been different. From the moment they met, he had never once wavered in his loyalty, in his promise to protect her. And though she had never said it out loud, she knew it was true. She knew that she didn't have to face this war alone. But it wasn't just about fighting. It was about trust, something she had lost long ago. "I'm not sure I can trust anyone again," she whispered. Eric nodded, his gaze softening. "I know, but trust is earned. It's not something that happens overnight. I don't expect you to trust me completely, not yet. But I need you to believe in what we're doing, for the galaxy, for the future." Elijah looked out at the stars again, her thoughts swirling. She had spent centuries hiding, running from the pain and the loss, but now, with the galaxy on the brink of destruction, she had to make a choice. She had to choose whether to keep running or to face the truth of who she was and what she was capable of. "I'll do my part," Elijah said finally, turning back to Eric. "But I need to know you'll be there no matter what, that I won't be alone in this fight." Eric smiled, a small but genuine smile that made her heart ache with the weight of everything they had been through together. "I'll be there, I promise." The next few days passed in a blur of planning and preparation. They knew the Empire was coming for them, and they couldn't afford to waste any time. Their target was a heavily fortified station located on the planet Arkan, a key command center for the Empire's military operations in the sector. If they could destroy the station, they could delay the invasion and give the rebels a fighting chance to regroup. Eric and his team worked tirelessly, coordinating with various rebel factions and using every piece of intel they had gathered. The station was well guarded, but they had a plan. They would infiltrate the station under the cover of darkness, disable the security systems, and plant explosives in key areas. It was a dangerous mission, but it was their best chance. Elijah, too, was ready. She had spent years training herself in the arts of combat, in honing her powers. But now, for the first time, she was using those powers not just for survival, but for a greater cause. She had never wanted to be a warrior, but the galaxy had left her no choice. She was the last of the Iridia, and with that came a responsibility she could no longer ignore. The night of the mission, the team set out under the cover of darkness. The station loomed ahead, a massive structure of steel and stone, its walls bristling with weapons and defensive systems. The air was thick with tension as they approached, each member of the team taking their position. Elijah and Eric led the charge, using their combined knowledge and skills to navigate through the station's defenses. As they moved through the corridors, Elijah felt a strange sensation. Something was off. She could feel the presence of the Empire's soldiers, but there was something else, something darker lurking in the shadows. She could hear their voices, feel their eyes upon them. It was almost as if the station itself was alive, watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Stay sharp," Eric whispered as they moved forward. "We're almost there." They reached the control room, the heart of the station. Elijah and Eric quickly set to work, planting explosives in key areas and disabling the security systems. They had moments before the Empire's forces realized what was happening, and they couldn't afford to waste any time. Elijah's powers surged as she manipulated the systems, sending pulses of energy through the station's control panels. Suddenly, an alarm blared, signaling that they had been discovered. The Empire's forces poured into the station, guns drawn, their presence a tidal wave of fury and strength. Eric and his team fought back, using every ounce of training and determination they had. The station shook as the explosives went off, causing the walls to tremble and the lights to flicker. Elijah felt the power within her reach its peak. She had tapped into the ancient energies of her people, and for a moment she felt unstoppable. She unleashed her abilities, sending waves of energy through the station, knocking the Empire's soldiers off their feet. The power surged through her, burning through her veins until she thought she might collapse from the strain. But she didn't. She couldn't. The mission wasn't over. They had to finish it no matter what. The station exploded in a brilliant burst of light, the shockwave ripping through the planet's surface. As the dust settled, Elijah and Eric stood amidst the ruins, their hearts pounding. The Empire had been dealt a blow, but it was only a matter of time before they retaliated. The war was far from over, but for the first time, Elijah felt a sense of purpose. She had taken the first step, and she was no longer alone. "We did it," Eric said, his voice low but filled with pride. Elijah looked at him, her violet eyes shining. "This is just the beginning." Together, they stood in the wreckage of the Empire's stronghold, knowing that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But they were ready to face whatever came next, together.